The 9th chapter is about mortality and birth rates. And this is a very interesting chapter because there's new data, there's new research. And this was a debate, how long do whales and dolphins live in captivity, that was a bit stagnant for several years because we had no new data, we had no new information. The most recent studies were like in 1995. Well, after Blackfish, which really put a lot of pressure on the industry, after things like the decision by the courts on the Georgia aquarium import permit, the industry was under a lot of pressure to do all of this research that I mentioned to you earlier they didn't want to do. They didn't want to know the answers to these questions. So we basically forced them, we, the animal community, forced them to do this research. So they did 2 studies very recently, 2015 and this year, 2019. One was on orcas and one was on bottlenose dolphins, both of them on survivorship, mortality rates, longevity, right? And both of those studies, when they were published, the industry did all of this PR and all of this media saying, it's as we said, they live as long in captivity as they do in the wild. Oh, I see a head shaking there. No, they do. They do live as long in captivity as they do in the wild. But what they didn't tell you, they literally did not tell you in these papers, these are scientific research papers that should have gone through significant peer review before they were published, and yet this got past the peer reviewers. Neither study explained, in great detail anyway, that the populations in the wild to which these captive whales and dolphins were compared were either critically endangered or at least threatened from pollution and human-caused impacts. All right? The best studied whales and dolphins in the wild are threatened populations. Look what's happening here in Hong Kong. Those dolphins have been studied very, very well. We have some of the best data on survivorship rates from these threatened populations because that's where managers are focused, that's where people are focused, we're worried about those populations. So we finance studies, we encourage graduate students to study these animals. Happy, healthy dolphins and whales, to be honest, are out there, but they're not really being studied the way we really wish they were because we're prioritizing these threatened and endangered populations. So what the industry actually discovered was, hey, our whales and dolphins are living as long as dolphins and whales in the wild. That's where they stopped the sentence, but what they should have continued with is, who are doing really badly because of pollution, and ship strikes and fisheries entanglement and so on. So what they did was they proved our point, which is that something about captivity affects these animals just as badly as all the threats they face from our activities in the wild. That is not something to be proud of. And yet they produced these papers and claimed it was great for them. It's actually supporting our position. And I cite these papers all the time. I hate that. The fact is they're supporting our position. The reason I have this photograph in here is this false killer whale is or was at Chimelong. And I took this picture 2.5 years ago. And for those of you who know something about whales and dolphins, you might notice that this animal's ribs are showing. That there's a dent in sort of the side of this. He's underweight. He's severely underweight. All right? And so he was performing. He was performing in the show, and he was severely underweight. And I noted it at the well, the really weird thing is I took this picture and I didn't really notice it until later when I was looking at the photograph, not the animal, in situ, but later when I was looking at the photograph, I was like, oh my God, this animal's severely underweight. Why was he performing? Why wasn't he being cared for by a veterinarian? He was not in the show when we were there a few days ago. We were told he would be by somebody who worked at the park, but he was not. Now, maybe he was just in the back. Maybe he's actually at some other location in Chimelong that Chimelong owns. But I will bet real money that he's probably dead. That he didn't survive much past a year or so. And in fact, the last time anybody mentioned that there was a false killer whale in the show at Chimelong was about a year ago. That's the last time anybody mentioned the false killer whale on social media. So I think he's gone. I think he died. He didn't survive this. But what really interested me, just in terms of dealing with the industry, is they were having this animal perform. We also saw a sea lion who was in really bad shape that we complained about, actually, because his skin was in really bad shape. He looked really, really mangy. He looked like he had some sort of skin disorder. And they did take him out of the performance after we complained, but they were having him perform before we complained. And chapters 10 and 11 are about people more than about the animals. Right? They're about these human-dolphin interactions, swim with, feeding them, petting them, so on, and also the risks to human health of those close interactions. Right? And so we've got a bunch of information in these two chapters about the risks that you actually face if you do have these close encounters with these animals. They can be quite violent, actually. You know, they've injured several people in these swim programs around the world. You know, they've head-butted them, they've rammed them with, you know, they've hit them with their tail, they've rammed them. People have had their ribs broken, had their face masks broken. If you're a diver, then you know that's got to be a pretty serious blow. People have been hospitalized after swimming with dolphins in captive programs. It's not all, you know, the fulfillment of a dream, right? And I'll guarantee you that although this lady is having the time of her life, for the dolphins, it's just a job. They do this multiple times a day, every day, all year long. She's just doing it once. So for her, it's the experience of a lifetime, but for them, it is a job of work. It is not the experience of a lifetime. Chapter 12 is mostly policy. It's not about the animals per se. It's about everything that's changed since Blackfish was released. And how many of you have seen Blackfish? Quite a few of you. Please watch it. It's actually, if you got something out of Born to be Free, you will get something out of Blackfish. So the photograph in the upper, well, it's not a photograph, it's an artist rendering, it's an artist drawing. It's a sanctuary, it's as we envision it. And this month, the very first beluga sanctuary will open. It's going to hold 2 belugas from Shanghai. Right, so it's got 2 Chinese dolphins in it when it opens this month. They're in Iceland. They're going to go to Iceland actually on June 19th is the current date. And what this is what we envision for as many whales and dolphins as we possibly can manage. All right, there are sanctuaries for elephants. There are sanctuaries for chimps. There are sanctuaries for bears, right? There are no sanctuaries for whales and dolphins, and it's because it's difficult to find a good, clean body of water that you can get permission to use and that is big enough, right? Because what we want to do is give them more of what we took away from them. We want to give them more space. We want to give them their natural, a small sliver of their natural habitat back. We want to give them more stimulation, more fish, more birds, something to do every day, right? And so the ideal locations for that are hard to find, particularly those that you can get permission to use, right? Because you can't buy a bit of the ocean. You have to get permission from authorities to use it. To build a marina, to build a harbor, to build anything into the water, which is usually considered, you know, open maritime traffic areas. And so to net off an entire bay or cove is going to be tough to do. It's possible, and this facility that has been developed in Iceland is proof of that, but it's not easy. The reason I have this photograph here is because they call this, the owners of this place, brand new by the way, just opened in February, a sanctuary. They're calling it a dolphin sanctuary. They're using our language against us, right? This is a dolphinarium for a swimming program. Commercial dolphinarium for a swimming program. And they're calling it a sanctuary because it's in natural water, because it's a pen in natural water. There's a lot of these places. And they look just like that, right? This is in the U.S. Caribbean. It's one of the first U.S. facilities, brand new U.S. facilities in a very long time. We've been pretty good at slowing the expansion of the industry in the U.S. Look at the water. That's as bad as it looks. It's after a heavy rain, and this is all runoff. This is sewage. It's full of bacteria. They do measurements after these events, and they find it's full of bacteria. This is sewage. This is dirt. This is, you know, from the road here, it's oil and gas that, you know, leaks from cars. It's pollution, and it just washes into this body of water. And the dolphins will have to live in that every time there's a heavy rain. And this happens, this kind of bad runoff in this body of water happens about 4 times a year. obviously, nobody's going to be swimming with those dolphins after something like this, but those dolphins will not have a choice. They will have to live in it regardless. We told them not to build it there. They did not listen to us. I don't know how well any dolphins are going to survive in this body of water. It just opened in February. We will find out. So this is how they're supposed to live, and this is what we cannot provide for them in captivity, right? A family of orcas in Alaska, a pod of dolphins in South America. We cannot provide them with this. We are unable to recreate even a fraction of this for them, and this is why they do not thrive in captivity. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the new report. By the way, this is the old one, so I'm sorry, that's still. This is our new report. This was the old one. We did this in 2015. It's what we launched the China Cetacean Alliance with. We came together and formed the alliance, the Hong Kong Dolphin Conservation Society, the Animal Welfare Institute, my organization, and several other Chinese, Taiwanese, and international organizations, and one from Hong Kong. And we launched in 2015 with this report. And it was an attempt to sort of just summarize what we knew. And by the way, what we know is not necessarily completely accurate because we do not have any access to official information. All we have is the information that's available to us through our own investigations. So we have a website. I urge you to visit it. You can download the report in English or Chinese there. And what it also has is investigation reports from the various facilities that we are trying to get as much information about every time we visit as we possibly can. So when we say, for example, that there are now over 1,000 cetaceans in captivity in China, over 1,000, we get that number from our investigations. We don't actually know exactly how many whales and dolphins are in captivity in China, but we have a good minimum number, because we've actually physically gone to these facilities and either counted them or we've done investigations online and reported what they're admitting to. They're admitting they have this many whales and dolphins, and so we count those. And at a minimum, there are over 1,000 whales and dolphins of a number of different species. There are now orcas, there's belugas, there's bottlenose dolphins. There's two kinds of bottlenose dolphins. There's Susichinensis, there's finless porpoise, there's Risso's dolphins. I mean, it's just, they're holding animals that they shouldn't be holding. Because historically in the West, those species never even survived, let alone thrived. And China's kind of going through all of this learning curve. They're not learning from the past. They're holding stenellas, which are these fragile open ocean dolphins that really do not survive well in captivity. The West doesn't even try to hold them anymore, but China has several, right? And they're not living very long. It's not something that was the result of primitive techniques back in the 60s. It's because they just don't thrive. So we did an update. We just put the Chinese version up online. But the English version's been there for a couple of weeks. It's brand new. There's your table of contents again. That chapter 6. I don't know how that English got in there, but it's all in Chinese. But also there's an English edition. And here's what it looks like. And you saw some of this in the film, but this is what it looks like now. There are now at least 80 operational ocean theme parks in China, right? And see all the gray ones? Those are being built as we speak. Some of them may have even opened already. Maybe it's 82 now. We'll find out soon. So, what we have is, in 2015, we knew of 39 operational ocean theme parks. There are now 80. Double the number in 4 years. And when you look at these facilities, they're brand new. We went to Shanghai and Haicheng. It's brand new. It just opened in November. It looks like it's from the 60s. All right. The only part of it that's state-of-the-art is the orca enclosure. The beluga enclosure is like a postage stamp surface area. It's quite deep as far as these tanks go, because the entire show is underwater. It's like this beluga ballet with divers. And the only place you can actually see the belugas is at the underwater viewing window. So they give them some depth just because of that, but they don't care about the surface area because there's no swimming around. There's just this little ballet that goes on in a small area. So that's all they give them. If you look at the surface of the water from the underwater viewing area and you see what the footprint is, what the surface area is, it's tiny. There's 3 belugas, 3 full-grown adult belugas in there. And they can't even really swim around. This facility was just built. It's not like it's from the 60s. They should have had state-of-the-art size, and they didn't even try. There were several enclosures that I saw like that. They built them out of a manual from 1965. Brand new facility, and the tanks look like they're from 50 years ago. No reason for that. They had everything they needed to know what state-of-the-art is, and they didn't do that. These are the 4 orcas at Shanghai Hecheng, as I mentioned. Now, like I said, bizarrely enough, this enclosure is actually state-of-the-art. It's the only one I saw that I would consider state-of-the-art. Because they copied it almost. I think, as a licensing matter, SeaWorld might have an issue with it, but they actually copied it from SeaWorld. The female was doing what I mentioned. The younger male, this is, I think, the older male. There's one that's large, considerably larger than the others, and he's the older male. There's a younger male, and there's 2 females. The younger male is covered in scars to an unnatural level. I mean, all whales and dolphins have scars. That's how they socialize. They use their teeth. Those kinds of, the wounds they inflict on each other are minor. Some of them may scar permanently, but it'll be a little scar, shallow scar, it might be permanent, but most of them are very shallow. And they heal, and they don't even scar. Right? This young male is covered in scars, deep scars, and around the face, which is very rare. And that's aggression. That's coming from somebody beating him up. I don't know who's beating him up. I actually suspect, and again, this is just me speculating because I haven't been able to watch them all to know. But my guess is the females are beating him up because females are dominant. Even though these guys were raised unnaturally, and they were captured very young and had been raised unnaturally, they were born in the wild, and they would have known that females were dominant. And so these females may be beating up this younger male. He was being very, very affiliative, very close and friendly with the older male, who may in fact sort of be protecting him. Or it could be that they had a big, massive fight, the 2 of them, and now the older male has established his dominance, so he's being nice to the younger guy. I don't know. But somebody's beating him up. And a couple of the scars we saw were pretty fresh. So this is an ongoing problem. It's not something that happened months ago and hasn't been repeated. Somebody is still beating him up. So again, I'm not sure what's going to happen to these guys. On the one hand, you kind of wonder, would it be better from a welfare perspective if they didn't survive? But I always want them to survive, because where there's life, there's hope, right? And maybe one day we can solve this problem and they can go back to the wild. I don't know. But I don't like to wish death on any animal. And so I hope they survive, but I'm not sure they will, because it's just not a very pretty situation.